Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission Agreement Act 2024.
Second the motion.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to see agreement which is set out in the schedule of the Securities Act, Chapter 7305 of the 2017 revised laws of the Commonwealth of Dominica. This legislative reform was endorsed by the Eastern Caribbean Monetary Council and at its 94th meeting on 11th October 2019. The proposed bill aims to modernize the Commission operational framework and align it with international standards, particularly those of the International Organization of Securities Commissions, that's the IOSCO. Mr. Speaker, in particular, the proposed Commission Agreement Bill 2024 will, 1, enable the Commission to operate effectively within the framework of the IOSCO, that's the Multilateral Memorandum of Understanding, concerning consultation and cooperation and the exchange of information. It will address identified deficiencies in the Commission Agreement 2000 by incorporating amendments that resolve legislative gaps and inconsistencies. This new enactment will also grant the Commission immunity and protection similar to those provided to the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank under the ECCB agreement. Such legal provisions would ensure robust safeguards for the Commission's operation, personnel, and assets while promoting regulatory stability. Furthermore, it will improve market operations, increase investor confidence, and foster greater participation in the ECSM, contributing to the growth of the economies of member states. Mr. Speaker, the Commission Agreement has been the foundation for regulating the regional securities market for over 18 years. However, international reviews have shown that substantial amendments are needed to modernize the legal framework, address deficiencies, and align with international standards. Mr. Speaker, other Eastern Caribbean Currency Union territories have enacted or are in the process of enacting this bill. Consistent with this action, I look forward to the support of members of this House for this bill. Mr. Speaker, in 2001, we had the Securities Bill, and there are three parts to it. The agreement, which is what I've just read out here. The second part is the Investment Fund Bill. And then the third part is the new Securities Bill, which will repeal that of 2001, which I'll be bringing later in the proceedings. I commend the bill to the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Dr. Honorable Vince Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission Agreement, which lays out the authority responsible for regulating the securities market in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Mr. Speaker, as we develop and as we seek to develop, there is need for a robust capital market where investors can comfortably invest their funds, and those who are developing companies and entities that require the inflow of cash can go onto the securities market to mobilize equity and mobilize resources so that we can see the development of more companies within the Eastern Caribbean. Mr. Speaker, we in the OECS, especially those of us who come under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas under Article 164, those least developed member states of the Caribbean community, at a distinct disadvantage. We see more developed securities and capital markets in the more developed member states, Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana, moving now quickly, very fast. And we find ourselves, Trinidad and Tobago, we are at a disadvantage in the OECS. And if we can pool our resources so as to ensure that investors can find a place to park their monies and to get a return, especially in projects that are developmental type projects within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, it will help all of us. Because one company in Dominica seeking to do a project that can be that can access funds on the capital market could be, placed in a better position to do business throughout the Eastern Caribbean as we mobilize resources. Because what we've seen and what most of us are concerned about is sort of the acquisition and mergers, which is active now in discussion at the level of CARICOM, by those bigger companies that are well established within the Caribbean, acquiring smaller companies in the OECS and putting us at a disadvantage. So it is important that we have the rules under which we can operate the securities market within the OECS. And this bill before us lays out some of the responsibilities of the Commission that can be of great value to investors, but also to countries generally. And we know it's not in distant memory what happened with British American Insurance. We know what happened to CLICO, and we know how people lost their life savings. This bill calls for greater supervision of companies that are prepared themselves to serve as investors, or companies investing funds for the for bondholders, shareholders, and or whichever way they may wish to call them. So the purposes of the Commission, which I found is of value to all of us, is to promote, and that is on Article 4, Clause 1b, to promote investor protection, or subsection 1b, through promotion of the high standards of professional and other activities within the securities market, to maintain effective, and C reads, to maintain effective compliance and enforcement programs supported by adequate statutory powers, and to promote growth, D, to promote growth and development of the capital markets. Mr. Speaker, increasingly, we will see the development of a robust capital market as we continue to develop. And this step today, with the agreement for the Commission, the Securities Regulatory Commission, as well as the investment funds and securities, as highlighted by the Minister of Finance, will become the essential part of ensuring a regulated securities market. And this clearly will become even more relevant as we start moving through different forms of investment and different instruments of investment. Remember, some time ago, some of us fell prey to something that by its very name was very encouraging to put our money. I don't think it's a pyramid, it's more the blessing part that takes some of us. So, we have to ensure that we can regulate any kind of activity that seems to be an investment type activity. And even institutions, financial institutions in Dominica that may be presenting themselves as investing and providing mechanisms or instruments for people to invest. All of those things have to be regulated and come under the Eastern Caribbean Securities Commission. I think that is important. And all of those things are a path towards creating a more transparent system, a system where the state, or states in that case in the Eastern Caribbean, can protect the populace and to ensure that we have recourse if ever we find ourselves in a situation where a person, or persons in this case, legal, will take advantage of unsuspecting investors. So, Mr. Speaker, I support the motion before us. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to wind up the debate on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission Agreement, Act of 2024, and just to go over some of the four main advantages of this act is really to get in alignment with international standards as regards to consultation, cooperation, and exchange of information. Secondly, to address the legislative gaps in the previous agreement, and also to protect the personnel and the assets. We heard of CLICO as well, so all that comes under here. And fourthly, in terms of investor confidence, which would lead to growth in economies of the different member states. So I think some of the other, not I think, I know some of the other OECS islands have gone ahead with the bill, and just a couple of us in the OECS are remaining, Dominica being part of it. So I think it would only be wise that we proceed with this agreement act commission. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
This concludes the debate. The bill is, it has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulation Commission Act 2024 be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The bill will now be read a second time.
Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission Agreement Act 2024.
The bill will now stand committed to a committee of the whole House to be considered clause by clause. House is in committee. Securities Regulation Commission Agreement Act 2024 passed the committee stage without amendment. The question is that the report of the committee on the bill be adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission Agreement Act 2024 be read a third time and passed.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulation Commission Agreement Act 2024 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission Agreement Act 2024.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
Mr. Speaker, I move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled Investment Fund Act 2024.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to seek Parliament's approval of an investment fund bill to strengthen the regulation of collective investment schemes offered within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. Collective investment schemes are investment vehicles that pool funds from mainly retail investors and invest those funds in a diverse range of securities to offer those retail investors risk diversification and professional management of their investment portfolio. There is no such company in Dominica, but some are domiciled in other Eastern Caribbean Currency Union member countries and are authorized by the regulators, the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulation Commission, under the current Securities Act, Chapter 7305 of the 2017 revised laws of the Commonwealth of Dominica to offer their products to Dominicans. The current Securities Act contains a few provisions to regulate these schemes, but these provisions are outdated and do not adequately address the development and expansion of that sector. A more extensive legal framework in line with international best practices is required, hence the reason why a separate act is proposed. This investment fund bill will provide for the regulation of securities business in the offshore sector, which is currently not regulated. Furthermore, it comprises provisions which are expected to facilitate greater participation of small investors in Eastern Caribbean securities through these collective investment schemes. The need for this bill has received the support of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union Monetary Council. I now commend the bill to the House for debate, Mr. Speaker.
The bill is before the House for debate.
Mr. Speaker, just to highlight, one of the main focuses of this bill is really to strengthen the regulation of collective investment schemes offered within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. This is really the main feature of this bill. And secondly, we have to recognize that it also provides for the regulation of securities business in the offshore sector, which is currently not regulated. So these are two of the salient features that will be addressed in that bill. And the Securities Bill of 2001, which we just did a while ago, that was the agreement part. So now we're doing the investment fund part. And later, I will bring the new Securities Bill, which will repeal the old one. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
This concludes the debate. The bill will now be stand committed to the Committee of the Whole House to be considered clause by clause. House is in committee. That the bill shortly entitled Investment Funds Act 2024 pass the committee stage without amendment. The question is that the report of the committee on the bill be adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Yes, Dr. No.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled Investment Funds Act 2024 be read a third time and passed.
I beg to second the motion, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Investment Fund Act 2024 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Investment Funds Act 2024.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
I move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled Securities Act 2024.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to second it. Guys.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to seek approval to repeal the Securities Act, Chapter 7305 of the 2017 revised laws of the Commonwealth of Dominica and replace it with the Securities Bill, which is presently before the House. The provisions of this new bill is broader in scope on the regulation of the securities and is consistent with international best practices for securities law. The Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission, or the Commission, was established on November 24, 2000, amongst the member states of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. The mandate of the Commission is to promote the development and provide for the regulation of a regional securities market. In 2009, the Commission undertook an assessment of the jurisdiction securities market legislative framework. This exercise commenced with a review of the current securities legislation governing the operations of the Eastern Caribbean securities market. It was found that the current legislation hinders the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission effective fulfillment of its mandate and the performance is regulatory duty. There are significant gaps, inconsistencies with ambiguity in the legislation, which has made interpretation and application of the requirement difficult to carry out in practice for both the regulator and the industry. It is anticipated that the new legislation will remove regulatory and supervisory hindrances to the work of the Commission. It will also facilitate easier access to new investment opportunities for residents of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union member countries, including the people of Dominica. It will provide additional job opportunities, for example, through the provision of investment advisory and other types of market intermediation services. It will allow foreign issuers to offer securities to residents as well as to allow for the listing of foreign securities on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange. And lastly, to spur the growth and development of the market and our countries. The replacement of the existing Securities Act has received the support of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union Monetary Council. Mr. Speaker, I commend the bill to the House.
The bill is before the House for debate. Yes, Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I believe it's an important piece of legislation. I'm happy that we have brought these three pieces of legislation to the House, all in an effort to encourage investments within the OECS. But I believe that where we have to be careful about is our usual tendency to be more regulatory rather than facilitating and encouraging investment. And so the legislation is fine, though it is heavy on the regulatory side, but we now have at the Monetary Council, at the Central Bank, now have to put in place, in motion, a system that will encourage the flow of resources into the region so that the region can have more access to more instruments of financing to help governments and other such entities access to cheaper financing, more longer-term financing, and financing that will encourage the development of the OECs. Because I find sometimes, I serve on the Monetary Council, and I find that we like to boast about the dollar respect to the US and to 60 or whatever, to 70, and it's been so for the last 50 years, and we have a 97% coverage of foreign exchange and so on, and almost like an IMF type approach to this thing. we always talk about the, the, the change in the deposit rates and the, et cetera. So there has to be, we have to appear to be modernizing financing instruments and financing policies and, and not be in the same mold or the same year the central bank was created. And I say so as a self-criticism because I said monetary reforms for some time. But we consistently raise those issues. So while these pieces legislation are important, what is going to be more important to us is how do we facilitate the flow of capital, that we are not overburdening regulation and making it difficult. So yes, we have what's supposed to be facilitating, but if we're more preoccupied with not taking risk and not encouraging monies from Asia and from the Middle East and other parts of the world where there is money to come in, then we'll have a problem. Because the reality is, the region, sub-region will not grow the way that we would like it to grow if we can't bring more money in. If we're taking $1 from St. Kitts and saying to Dominican, from St. Vincent to Trinidad, that's the same dollar. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, and governments are finding it increasingly difficult to access capital for economic and social development. And the monies we're getting are so tight in terms of the repayment schedule because you really cannot see the real benefit that you want to see in a 20-year lending instrument. It's you know, the UK got a 200-year repayment plan on their debt. They only started paying something in 2014, after 200 years. You understand? And plus they have access to the money markets, the securities markets. And so we're a bit late in the game, but we always have to adopt the saying, rather late than never. But we have absolutely, as an emergency, have access to more instruments of lending to our countries. Otherwise, you will find us having greater access to overdraft facilities. That is extremely short term and expensive. You will go on the securities market, but it's for 90 days. You have to repay the 20 million or the 40 million within 90 days of maturity. You can't do much with that. Except it's to pay a bill, and by the time you finish paying the bill, you have to repay it. And the regional securities market doesn't have an appetite for longer term offerings. People go more into the short term. And how do we incentivize those with money to make their money available on the longer term instruments? And I think this is where the minds of the Caribbean have to converge, and not only the sub-region, but the entire Caribbean region have to converge and to come up with more robust and more exciting things. And even the issue of crypto and so on. You know, I know that in this world we always want to wait for the US to say yes, for us to say yes too. But we have seen the behavior, the positive behavior, I must say, of President Trump. And now, from the time President Trump attended an entity that deals with bitcoins and crypto, and he made a purchase, and then he started speaking and meeting the people who were in the business, you've seen money flowing, money flowing, and money started coming into banks. And when you look at the number of US entities who are involved in this, you'll be shocked to see even the federal government has been quietly and secretly involving itself in cryptocurrency and so on. And we here in the Caribbean, we here in the OECS, we are free to even talk about it. I'm not saying that let us get involved in it. No, but let us do the groundwork, let us do the legwork, Let us educate people about this sensibly, and so that when we get the go-ahead, we're already on the marks. But that's the way the world is going. Yes, we have to regulate, and yes, we have to know the KYC and all this, and all the systems can be put in place. But that's the way the world is going. You can buy anything with your cryptocurrency, anything in the world, anywhere in the world. And so we have to be a little bit more sexy, Mr. Speaker, with the things that we're doing. And we can't do things the old archaic way and the old ways and so on and so forth. And when everybody has taken over and there's nothing left, we want to jump on the train. And you recall, Mr. Speaker, this government about 5 or 6 years ago started that conversation. And it became a negative talking point. But our view was, look, let us explore. We know our monetary policy are centralized. We have delegated our monetary policies to the central bank, to the Monetary Council. And so monetary policy will have to be central. But I believe that there has to be a situation. I mean, Prime Minister Motley indicated that the banks are security firms. You know, and one understood why she was saying that. I always find that this legislation and so on sometimes are too heavy on regulation. You know, all our bills back in the days, all our laws, is Immigration Prevention Act. You know, everything was a prevention. You understand? And it's almost like you could say, well, Securities Prevention Act. Because it's so heavy on regulation that it is 50 years late, but it is 40 years late. He's not saying, well, let us jumpstart the years and let us go to the position in the line that we should be. It is really highly regulatory, licensing and this and forfeiture of license and this and so forth. But it's okay. Regulation is important, and we support regulation. But I'm hoping that when the Minister of Finance goes, that he has the authority of the Parliament to speak decisively and firmly at the Monetary Council and say that yes, we've passed legislation, but I've been told by the Parliament that we're about 30 years late, and we're still 30 years late. And how do we now modernize the infrastructure to allow our sub-region to be attractive, to the people with money, because we do not have enough money in the OECS to build the OECS, and they want money, and therefore we need a lot of money from outside. And while the money from the World Bank and others will help, but these instruments are very, 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 very short in maturity. You understand? This is why a bank gives you 25 years to pay for a house, because these are short-term lending. They don't want you to die or whatever it is, or you come to retirement age and you can't pay them. And it places a burden on people to have the house that they want to have, because it's a short-term period. They give you up to a motor car 5 years. You understand? And therefore the payment is higher than what if they give you 10 years to pay. So all of these things I believe that we have to look at in the modernization, the making it more attractive and allowing people to be able to do more things with the same money. You understand? With the same money. So some of us will take a loan to build a house, but we can't furnish it. You see what I'm saying? And so these are the kind of things that the government is pushing for. These kind of reforms that we're pushing for, and so forth. So I get the impression every time this central bank and others and IMF and this one bring something, World Bank bring something, it's always to prevent something, rather than we breaking new ground. And if we're not breaking new ground, well, at least let us pitch a better tent, so that we can hold longer a section of the ground that has been broken. So while we agree with this thing, investigation, inspection, and enforcement, let's not go police to me, listing and trading of foreign securities, registration, and marketplace membership. These things are important, but how do we get these people? How do we facilitate people more? To open a bank account in the Caribbean is impossible. Even for us as born citizens, for a foreigner, it's impossible. I mean, I was renewing my banking details and they asked me for 4 IDs. I said, well, which 4 IDs are you talking about? I said, we have a passport in Dominica, we have a driver's license in Dominica, and social security. If you give me a 4, tell me the one you give me 4. We don't have national ID card yet. So, but because these people tell them overseas that it's 4 you need, they want you to get 4. Where you get it for? A fisherman's license? What is it for? You know, a labor card? A labor membership card? Which one it is? So, I mean, so I just find that we in this part of the world that we are we're too constricted. We're in a hazmat suit, you know, and and we have to free up ourselves in this Caribbean and liberate ourselves and let us try to find, as small as we are, our rightful place around the table and so on. Because everybody taking advantage of all of the opportunities. Wait when January 20th come, and you will see who is the king of crypto in the world. And Bitcoins, the United States, going to run the world with that. Just by President Trump, just being outside of our conference of this thing. There is a buzz in the world. You go across the world. This is why the business community globally are so excited about President Trump. Because he is not the conventional person. And we have to shake up, we have to shake the tree and shake the world and let things happen. Let things happen. Because people have to be able to access different sources of funding. You're a businessman, Honorable Speaker. You have many investments and so forth. But you're getting from a same little bank. Well, how can a little bank give you the same kind of 11% or 6% or 7% and so forth? And then you consolidate. I mean, how much consolidation can you have? So it's not the bank's fault, and the credit union's fault. The credit union have a little bit of money that you have to protect and so forth. You're not sure at what point in time people will come for their money, so you can't give no long-term lending. So for us to really build it, we need a lot of money to come into the Caribbean. I mean, we need at least a 300 billion US dollars to come into the Caribbean now. For governments and for private sector entities to have access to the financing that they need, the monies that they need to put in place the real foundational investments that we need to transform our economies to have the consistent 7 and 8 and 10% growth and real growth that can create wealth for people, more money in people's pocket, more money in people's bank accounts. You understand what I'm saying? And so that we can see a true presence of wealth in the Caribbean region. And unless we get money from outside, unless we a little bit more exciting with our regulatory framework and so forth, obviously ensuring that the issue of money laundering, know your clients, and all of those banking principles and requirements are met. But there's a lot of money floating around the world. But they may not come to our region because we're too restrictive. You go to the United States as anybody inside there or otherwise, and within less than 24 hours, you have a bank account. Open. You go to the Middle East and you open a bank account. Yes, when money comes in, they want to know where the money comes from, the source of funds, and you will go through your process, and the money is cleared and the money is deposited in the account. But we don't want money to come. And if the banks are not allowing money to come, where are we going to get it? We're not making money in Dominica. We're not making money in any of the Caribbean countries. So we have to find a mechanism, a transparent mechanism, a mechanism that maintains all of the good governance principles and all the banking requirements to make money come. I mean, you go to the bank, you've been 2,000 US down there, have to ask you lots of questions and so on, and you hold the money for 4 weeks. 2,000 US. I mean, give me a break. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, the government gives you a check. They see the reason why the government gives you a check. The bank account of government in the bank itself, and you have to fill a whole form of source of funds. That's not, the truth of the matter is the law was not envisaged, or the law was not drafted for that kind of behavior. But the banks adopt that kind of behavior. That makes it impossible. The government give you a check. National Bank going to make a check. Money in anything. And when they give you a check, they have a note saying, for this. They will fill a form. Mr. Speaker, I have to fill a form every time. I'm telling people, why do I have to fill the form? Which section of the law mandates me to fill a form like this? If I go and I bring cash to the bank, and I bring 10 or 12,000 cash in the bank, it will be source of funds. But if I take money from account A in the bank, and I put in account B in the same bank, what source of funds is talking about? So we interpret regulations more to prevent rather than ensuring proper management, proper oversight. And it frustrates people. And that's why investors sometimes do not want to come to the Caribbean, because it is impossible for them to transact. And they have money in HSBC, they can't bring it to the Caribbean. They have money in Bank of America, they can't bring it to the Caribbean. They have money in Wells Fargo, they can't bring it to America, into the Caribbean. They have money in the Bank of Scotland, they can't bring it. They have money in Credit Suisse, you can't bring it in the Caribbean. So how is the man going to invest? How is he going to pay for the land that he wants to buy to do an investment in the country? So I'm making the point because we're here on the investment funds, but we don't have enough monies for us to talk about investment funds. So where are we going to get the money from? It has to go from outside the Caribbean. Because all the money we had, the slave owners take it away. And when you talk about reparation, mentally, the people who don't did that was slave owner. So they're not in that. So the opportunity for compensation is near nil. You see what I'm saying? So it is something that we have to look at. Something we have to look at. But it's an important piece of legislation. But I want to caution that we have to move away from the regulatory stuff. I understand that some of those things are impositions. These bigger countries believe that we're competing with them, and they want to squeeze us in every single way, shape, or form, because they don't want us to be independent of them. They want us to be there at their mercies and so on. And so everything we need, we have to go to the World Bank and for 20-year loans, and they give you a 5-year grace period, that's plenty, and then you have to pay back in large sums. And it takes them 8 years or 10 years to give you the money, but you have to pay them back in 20 years. And so we have to get monies in and do like other countries. It's easy to bring money in America, it's easy to bring money in France and so on. Yes, you have to do no KYC and so on. But our own people have created rules beyond the legislation. The legislation is already challenging, and to bring rules of their own is impossible. When we should really be seeking to modernize the monetary system and the investment fund system and so forth, you have a challenge and so on. So I support the intention of the securities bill, because we need to strengthen the regulatory framework and put a better system in place to facilitate. But I find that the bill is heavy on regulations and very small, and facilitation. Because that's what we need now in the Caribbean is facilitation. How do we get money in so that we can get the banks now to have longer term financing, get governments to have longer term financing. Because if we get money, for example, the Minister of Foreign Affairs made reference to the geothermal earlier this morning. If we were to get a 50-year or 100-year repayment for geothermal, let's do the 400 megawatt plant. Let's talk to France. You know what I'm saying? But if they're gonna give us financing, I don't know, you don't have access to the financing that you really need to invest in these kinds of investments and so forth. And if you are going to invest in road infrastructure that's not bringing a direct return to you, but it's important to facilitate trade and commerce, and you give me 20 years to repay $100 million that we just took this morning. This is why governments before this government never went ahead and invested in those kind of infrastructure. But we in this government, we look at this thing from a long-term standpoint. What do you need to really spur the development of the country? And we've seen the returns on this. As we saw with United Airlines coming in February, and another one possibly from JFA coming in, and the investment in the airport and so forth. So there are a number of things that are tied together. But for you to really get to the 10% growth, sustain 10% growth, with the cheaper financing, your longer term financing for not only the government, but private sector and the banking system. Because all the banks rely on now is the people's deposits, pension money. You understand? Because even the banks cannot go and invest in long-term funding because it's people money that they have. Because they have not been able to generate by wearing their own investments any significant return because they give us short-term lending. And so, yeah, I think the sub-region, the Caribbean, is a crossroads. And I believe that we need to be bold and decisive, but for it to work, it must be collective. It must be collective. And I think that the Caribbean region has to seriously speak about, and the central bank has to speak about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and those new instruments, of monetary denotation. And this is where we have to go, and I'm happy that President Trump is embracing it, and I do hope that the Feds will support him, and that it becomes part of the mainstream banking system, because in other parts of the world it has become mainstream. I don't want to name countries there, but in some parts of the world you can deposit your money in there. Rather than what we have now, people are online with the local money that they have in National Bank or the credit union, and using that now to invest and losing their money, because if you have to be watching something every minute to go up and go down, I mean, anything if you have to watch a port, you don't do nothing else. And so I'm saying that people are being forced to engage in an activity that places them at risk. Because the reality is, people will try different things to make some money. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs referenced the blessing. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't mind to have the little blessing thing happening now. But that too has its attendant risk. The first 3, 4, 5 people will get a bigger blessing. and by the time 5 or 6 pass, the rest of us we'll have a curse. You see what I'm saying? But back in the days, the blessing was blessing a lot of people there. I mean, and that thing started going around. I mean, Oscar, you know that, right? You see what I'm saying? But the reality is, if if those financial institutions, if those financial institutions and the central banks of this part of the world are not going to be progressive, are not going to be innovative, then people will fend for themselves. And people will create their own mechanisms to have access to more money, which is risky because when you have people holding money in a bag, there's always a risk that the money will disappear. You know what I'm saying? If people, this is why, so I'm saying, so this is what happening here. People trying different things to see how they can bring in a $5,000 because they have to buy 1,000 blocks to put an extension in a room because their daughter just have a baby and daughter needs a room. What do you do? So, but we in the government, even if we have the appetite for it and we have the interest for it, we're restricted because we're not an island unto ourselves. We do not control the regulatory systems, and we're part of a regional system. I mean, similarly with the CBI program, all of these developed countries, I mean, they're still taking Russians and Belarusians, and somebody tell us don't take. But all Russian money in all developed countries. But who are we? You understand? But that's reality. So you have to deal with so many restrictions that, and people hold you responsible because they have the challenges and they feel that the government may not be able to assist them. But on those points, the government cannot do it on its own. But if we were on our own, these things that we have gone away to them, we would have had cryptocurrency and bitcoins in the country. And then people have their wallets and transfer money from one wallet to the other and buy a phone and if you have enough, you buy a house from with it. And you go in. You pay your child education on it. You go on Amazon and other things. So I think we need a revolution. I think we need a revolution of the mind, the revolution of the system. But we cannot be timid. And there are too many timid people around who feel constricted and who feel that they have to read a script from the IMF. Because people looking to get a job from the IMF tomorrow, so they don't want to upset the IMF people. And then we'll have to suffer as people. So we're shaky place, man. Yeah. So that's part of my frustration with the system. You know, that I go across the world and I see people enjoying life with crypto and enjoying life with Bitcoin. And we in the Caribbean, they don't know. They don't know. And we ourselves, we you know, and then we talk about people, other people doing it, but we refuse to do it ourselves. So, by the way, I support as I said, I support the securities bill before us. I think from a regulatory standpoint, it is strong, but I believe that we have to look at it from a facilitation standpoint. And what are the elements we need to put in place to attract money? And you're not going to attract bees with vinegar. And if this thing is over-regulated, it becomes difficult for you to attract the monies that you need. Because a man with money, he's not like he have a problem with his money. He's going to look for opportunities. And if the opportunity is not welcoming to him, is not facilitating to him, then he won't bring the money. It's not like people don't come to invest in our country because they love us, you know. Even Dominicans who invest in Dominica, they love Dominica and they will do anything for Dominica, Dominica, I love you, and so on. They invest because they want to make profits, they want to make money. That's why if they're not making money, they're not blinking their eyes to close their business. I mean, that's the reality. So somebody who is not born in our country, is not born in our region, is not coming here to invest because he loves the place and is the only place in the world he can invest. No. It's a highly competitive world, and he or she will go where he is facilitated. And the system facilitates. The legislation that we have is facilitated. But if we're gonna go in a prevention mode, we'll have a problem. We'll be starting off bad. And so I don't want anybody to misunderstand or misrepresent what I'm saying. This legislation is fine, but it has to go beyond the stricture of regulation and focus on equally on facilitation and attracting and being attractive. And so these are my words, Mr. Speaker, my contribution to the securities bill before us. Thank you very much.
I obviously don't have much more to say. I, I think the point has been well taken, and I've been given the job. When I get at the meetings of the Eastern Caribbean Council Monetary Union, I know what my job is, to facilitate more finance into the region. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
This concludes the debate. It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Securities Act 2024 be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The bill will now be read a second time.
Securities Act 2024.
The bill will now stand committed to a committee of the whole House to be considered clause by clause. House is in committee. Okay, we could just take part 11. That the bill shortly entitled Securities Act 2024 passed the committee stage without amendment. The question is that the report of the committee and the bill be adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled Securities Act 2024 be read a third time and passed.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Securities Act 2024 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Securities Act 2024.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
Mr. Speaker, for the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission agreement in clause 3, there's a little part missing there. The agreement, the Securities Regulatory Commission agreement, part 3. It was previous, not the investment fund, not the securities bill, the agreement part.
Okay. That is it? Or you going to add it? Yes.
3. The government of Dominica hereby enters into and adheres to the agreement, adopts and adheres to the agreement, Mr. Speaker. The government of Dominica,
Hold on.
the government of Dominica hereby
The government of Dominica
hereby
hereby
adopts
It's already there, so all you have to do is after adopts, which is where it stops abruptly. the
Yes.
four words, and adheres
adopts,
to
yes,
and adheres to the agreement. Full stop.
adhere to the agreement. So,
Yes, but you'd have to amend it. You'd have, because it's
yeah, because,
incomplete.
but we had committee stage, so we could just do the amendment there. And when we come back,
If you want to go for the formal statement,
We just Mr. Lottos will just take reference to that point, and add it to the process.
yeah, because we could just do that amendment and come back to that same piece and say that and move a motion to do that amendment. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's move it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So the honorable, so you can move the motion for that amendment on that act. Somebody will second it and we will go to have a vote on it.
Mr. Speaker, I move the motion for the amendment of 3.
Yeah.
That's the Eastern
Seconded, Mr.
Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission agreement.
Okay, members, we understand what we are talking about. So there was a slight error in terms of the wording missing. So the section that was missing was under clause 3, that is on the second page. You know, it was supposed to read, the government of Dominica hereby enter into and adopts and adhere to the agreement. But the part that and adhere to the agreement was left out in writing. So we are saying that with the minister, the honorable minister, is moving a motion, but then we'll adopt it. Agreed? All of us have to agree, so no debate. Okay, good. So honorable minister, let's go through the process properly. Let's go. Adopt. Let's go.
Mr. Speaker, I move a motion to adopt the amendment to 3 on the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission agreement.
Yes. Seconded.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
Seconded. Yeah.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that in clause 3, that is of the Eastern Caribbean Securities Regulatory Commission agreement, clause 3, an amendment be made to read that the government of Dominica hereby enters into, adopts and adhere to the agreement. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. So that is the amendment to this piece of legislation. Okay. So where were we on the Securities Act now? Yeah, we passed, Mr. Clerk? Yes, so great. So let's proceed. Honorable Bachman, let's proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled the Money Laundering Prevention Amendment Act 2024. Second it, please.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to second the motion.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, this proposed amendment is a very simple but progressive one. And according to Section 28.1, Mr. Speaker, of the Money Laundering Prevention Act, Chapter 7303 of the 2017 Revised Laws of Dominica, anyone who transports, Mr. Speaker, or attempt to transport cash in and out of Dominica exceeding $10,000 or in any other amount prescribed under the regulation made under this act shall report the fact to the Financial Intelligence Unit, the FIU, at the prescribed time and in the prescribed manner. Mr. Speaker, the amount of $10,000 Eastern Caribbean currency places Dominica way below the threshold recommended by the Organization for Economic Cooperation Development and the Financial Action Task Force, and can lead to tremendous frustration for legitimate business people who travel on a regular basis in and out of Dominica. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that all these elements, when examined carefully, can affect the ease of doing business in Dominica and can negatively influence Dominica's doing business score, which is a global rating that can determine investors' interest in Dominica. And Mr. Speaker, this amendment of Section 281 of the Money Laundering Prevention Act shall come into effect, Mr. Speaker, by simply placing US, which is US currency, before the word $10,000, Mr. Speaker. This, Mr. Speaker, will bring Dominica to the international standard as indicated by the OECD and the Financial Action Task Force. And it is important to note also, Mr. Speaker, that all our regional partners are way above that threshold. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, this amendment is in keeping with the global realities of the world. Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I wish to recommend the proposed measure before this honorable House, Mr. Speaker.
Bill is before the House for debate.
There being no debate, Mr. Speaker, I must say that this is a very progressive and much needed, most necessary, Mr. Speaker, intervention. And it signals Dominica is open to doing business with utmost ease and comfort to bona fide business players, Mr. Speaker. In so doing, Mr. Speaker, with the permission of the Honorable House, I beg to move the third reading of the said bill.
No, not yet, not yet, not yet. Let's go, let's
So
go.
not yet, Mr. Speaker.
Let's go. Yeah, okay. Yeah. It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Money Laundering Prevention Amendment Act 2024 be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The bill will now be read a second time.
Money Laundering Prevention Amendment Act 2024.
The bill will now stand committed to a committee of the whole House to be considered clause by clause. House is in committee. I have to report that a bill shortly entitled Money Laundering Prevention Amendment Act 2024 passed the committee stage without amendment. The question is that the report of the committee on the bill be adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Speaker, I so move that the bill shortly entitled the Money Laundering Prevention Act, Amendment Act of 2024 be read a third time and pass. Anybody to second it?
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Money Laundering Prevention Amendment Act 2024 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Money Laundering Prevention Amendment Act 2024.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
Mr. Speaker, I so move that the bill shortly entitled the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Act be read a second time. Seconded.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, this is a similar measure and proposed amendment before this honorable House. And in keeping with standards of best practices, Mr. Speaker, of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and also the Financial Action Task Force, Mr. Speaker, this bill seeks to amend Section 63A1 of the Proceeds of Crime Act, Chapter 1229 of the 2017 revised laws of the Commonwealth of Dominica. Mr. Speaker, Section 63A1 of the said act gives a custom officer or a police officer or a police officer the authority to seize or detain cash imported or exported from Dominica in an amount not less than $10,000. Meaning that, Mr. Speaker, any amount of $10,000 EC, Eastern Caribbean currency, must be so declared in order to avoid that eventuality or possibility. Mr. Speaker, this amendment therefore proposes a simple amendment that would increase that threshold, Mr. Speaker, from the current $10,000 EC and for cross-border transfer and physical transfer of cash, Mr. Speaker, from $10,000 EC, the equivalent, therefore, of $3,745 US to $10,000 US. So we're moving from $10,000 EC, Eastern Caribbean currency, to $10,000 US. Mr. Speaker, the Financial Action Task Force, which is a global standard setter for fighting money laundering and other financial crimes, Mr. Speaker, like financing of terrorism and other predicate offenses, Mr. Speaker, linked to money laundering, have declared that, Mr. Speaker, that or recommends that funds over $15,000 US or euro must be declared, which means, therefore, we are way below that threshold. Even by now proposing $10,000 US, it still puts us below the international standard. As I said, Mr. Speaker, let me reiterate for emphasis, Dominica's current threshold sets at $10,000 EC. And I made reference to the equivalent in terms of US currency. Now, Mr. Speaker, as I said just now, this places a huge burden on business owners and travelers, Mr. Speaker. Many of our regional players and counterparts, Mr. Speaker, have already increased their threshold way above what obtains in Dominica. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a simple amendment that has been proposed before this honorable House. All we are proposing is to insert immediately before the word $10,000 to put US. In other words, US currency. Mr. Speaker. I therefore, Mr. Speaker, commend this measure or this proposed amendment to this honorable House, Mr. Speaker.
The bill is before the House for debate.
Mr. Speaker, just very quickly, I just wanted to lend my support to the minister on this amendment. I think it is it's a bit late, but always late than never. I think that has created a number of challenges for visitors in Dominica. That they're traveling from Asia is US 10,000. They travel to US 10,000. They go to Barbados, it's US 10,000, and then they either have to spend the money in Barbados, and some people forget that they have the money, and a lot of people have been delayed at the airport or detained rather at the airport, and I think that is now bringing it into some level of parallel with the rest of the world and in sync with the rest of the world. And I think it's a progressive move, and I think I want to commend the minister for bringing it to the parliament, so that now instead of 10,000 EC dollars as is currently required, mandated by law, it will be 10,000 US, and so. Um, and of course, you have to declare these funds when you're coming in, so that you have so the form will say instead of 10,000 EC, 10,000 US or more, you have to declare and so on. And I think this no doubt will address the challenges which we normally have at the customs when people are either leaving the country or coming into the country, and they have foreign currency with them. So great stuff, and I fully support this measure, Mr. Speaker.
And in the interest of time, Mr. Speaker, again, running a government is not only about building roads and houses, etc., but it's of course to facilitate doing business and to make it easier for those of us who are bona fide in the things that we do, and to do so with much more comfort and ease without being interrupted by law enforcement personnel, Mr. Speaker. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
This concludes the debate. It has been moved and seconded that a bill shortly entitled Proceeds of Crime Amendment Act 2024 be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The bill will now be read a second time.
Proceeds of Crime Amendment Act 2024.
The bill will now stand committed to a committee of the whole House to be considered clause by clause. House is in committee.
Mr. Speaker, yet another very simple but totally needed amendment to bring us in time, in contemporary times, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Interpretation Act makes provision in respect to the operation and interpretation and citation of acts of parliament and subsidiary legislation and other legal and official documents and for related purposes. This act, Mr. Speaker, smoothed the transition from our pre-colonial time to an independent and contemporary time. Section 10 of the said act reads, Mr. Speaker, that acts and subsidiary legislation or regulations, Mr. Speaker, shall be published in the official Gazette, and unless it is otherwise provided therein, shall take effect and come into operation on the date of such publication. Mr. Speaker, the language of the Act obligates the printing of the Gazette, which is normally published by the government printer. However, Mr. Speaker, the world and Dominica have moved away from the heavy reliance solely on printed press, with all the forms of communication that are emerging now, Mr. Speaker, and we are moving towards a very highly electronic world and various forms, and Mr. Speaker. It has become, Mr. Speaker, it has become more than necessary for us to examine the format which the Gazettes ought to take and be presented to the public, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this country, your government, has embarked on a journey to becoming the first climate resilient nation in the world. Goal 16, outlined in the National Resilience Development Strategy, which has a time horizon of 2030, includes, Mr. Speaker, the promotion of peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development and the provision of access to justice for all. Given the importance of the official Gazette, there is a need, Mr. Speaker, to ensure an electronic format for the official Gazette of Dominica. To this end, Mr. Speaker, this amendment is seeking to amend Section 10 of the Interpretation Act and inserting two new subsections, subsection 4 and subsection 5, Mr. Speaker, and after subsection 3. Mr. Speaker, these subsections will read subsection that the Gazette may also be published by electronic form. I think that is very important in 2024. Subsection 5, Mr. Speaker, be printed in electronic version of the Gazette shall be published on the same day. Mr. Speaker, with these very few words, I present this proposed amendment to this honorable House.
The bill is before the House for debate.
Mr. Speaker, you know, we are doing so many progressive things today. Why debate, Mr. Speaker? And it's true, Mr. Speaker, I mean, in 2024, I mean, we should be able to go and access our laws by way of the Gazette and information on the Gazette through electronic means. And that is simply what this measure is trying to do, to keep us up to the current global trend and to depart from our almost antiquated existence, Mr. Speaker, and to put us in sync with contemporary time, Mr. Speaker. So I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, that there be no debate. And Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Interpretation and General Clauses Amendment Act 2024 be read a second time. Those in favor? Amen. Those against? The ayes have it. The bill will be now read a second time.
Interpretation and General Clauses Amendment Act 2024.
The bill will now stand committed to a committee of the whole House to be considered clause by clause. House is in committee. I have to report that the bill shortly entitled Interpretation and General Clauses Amendment Act 2024 passed the committee stage without amendment. The question is that the report of the committee on the bill be adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I therefore move that the bill shortly entitled the Interpretation and General Clauses Amendment Act 2024 be read a third time and pass.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled the Interpretation and General Clauses Amendment Act 2024 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Interpretation and General Clauses Amendment Act 2024.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House be adjourned until tomorrow at 10 a.m. Tomorrow, the 17th of December.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the House be adjourned on December 17th, 2024 at 10 a.m. Until 10 a.m. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House stand adjourned until 10 a.m. December 17th, 2024.
Mr. Speaker.